make sure that everybody can see my screen. Um, so yeah, so I cannot stress how important I think this topic is for not only HR, but leaders and managers in organizations, and talking about, post-COVID retention and what it looks like and why it's so important. We've kicked 2020 to the curb, thank God. And 2021 has started off with a bang of we're hiring. I think that we've all experienced this. And next week, our topic is around the hiring process. And, you know, essentially the state of affairs, I don't need to tell you, is we have record low unemployment, unfilled positions, a huge focus on talent acquisition for the first 6 months of 2021. We've done things, organizations have done things like hiring bonuses, employee referral programs have been amped up, salary increases have happened. Companies are doing all kinds of creative advertising. My mom lives in Allentown, and there's a giant billboard for Behr paints that I see every time I go up there. But so we're focused on that. We have our talent acquisition people focusing on that. But now what? Right? We're in the second half of 2021, and the wave of resignations that are coming through, that are trending to come through, that are already coming through, the clients I speak with, my colleagues who I speak with, of people who are resigning in unprecedented numbers. It's called all kinds of different things, from the turnover tsunami to the Great Resignation to COVID YOLO. And essentially, the 40 to 60% of people plan to leave their job in 2021. Something like, this is from Microsoft, and I took a couple different snapshots of people's surveys of this. Something like 90% of people are going to be interviewing or looking, if you will, and 40 to 60% plan to leave their jobs in 2021. So what I want to talk about today is why, and are you prepared, and what you can do. So let's talk first about why, right? So certainly the COVID YOLO, which is, 2020 taught me that I am not prioritizing my life correctly, that I need to do things differently for my personal health, my family's health, or whatnot. There's not much you can do about that, right? There's absolutely there are things, when we talk about engagement and we talk about the disengaged, right? There's not much you can do there, right? You want to focus on your partially engaged. But anyway, there's also the folks who had a really bad experience in 2020, right? There's folks who had a manager who, may have not met their needs that needed to be met, and personally feel very hurt by what happened through the pandemic. There's not much you can do about that either. And remember all those open positions that everybody is hiring for, and people are getting poached and being given really major salary increases, et cetera. There's also not much you can do there. Right. This all reminds me of when I was working back in the .com era, and everybody wanted to be in a pre-IPO company because they wanted to become billionaires. And the company I was working in had experienced their initial public offering. So we had employees come to us regularly where they said, I'm being offered 50% more, I'm being doubled. And we just said, you have to decide what you want to do. Your business can't sustain that. Most businesses are looking at appropriate salaries, but again, these are some things we can't really do anything about. So I want to give you the other side of the story and what we can do something about. And this is as important in the hybrid, remote, in the office environment as anything, right? These are equally as important, and these are what I call the 4 forces of disengagement, right? So this blue line is that employee, right? That they start and I love it here, right? I love working here. I love coming to work, and my engagement and thus my performance metric is high. I do a good job. What brings people down to this red line are these 4 forces, which is job fit, right? I'm not in the right job for me. You sink right down to that red YOLO. Like, I'm out. I can't do this job anymore. I can have the best job for me, but if my manager sucks and my manager doesn't know how to talk with me and doesn't understand what motivates me, that's bringing me right down to that red line as well. People leave managers, right? Culture. We're going to talk about culture fit and making sure your company has a values-based organization, it is meeting the cultural requirements that people want to be working in. And then team. Do I like the people I'm working with? Do I see the people I'm working with? Do I need to see the people I'm working with? That's really where the hybrid environment is going to play a big role, and where there needs to be much intention around team. So let's talk about these 4 things. I'm going to first talk about job fit. And when I talk about job fit, and I could do an entire 20 minutes, 30 minutes, probably an hour, if anybody has heard me talk before, around job fit. And here's what I'm talking about. I want to paint this picture for you. The whole person comes to work, right? We tend to focus our interviewing on the briefcase, which is on an individual's knowledge, skills, and experience. The briefcase tends to tell us what somebody can do. Somebody has asked here where the data is from. The data is, I have collected data. You'll see footnotes along the way where I'm going from, so you'll see where it comes from. The turnover data was collected from Microsoft. So the briefcase, knowledge, skills, and experience. This talks about what a person can do. We tend to focus our interviews here, right? And we hire people for what they can do, and then we fire them for how they will do the job. And this is as important. So the head, how you're naturally wired to work, how quickly, which is a cognitive gauge, and how we tend to work with other people, how we tend to, are we task or people focused? Do we drive the process? Does the process drive us? Are we responsive? Do we need to get it right the first time? These are all behavioral constructs in our minds, right? And when an individual is put in a job that they do not mesh with, for instance, let's say we hire somebody, and this happens all the time. We take somebody who's really, 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 really good at their job. And what they're really good at is doing repetitive routine work, making sure that things do not fall through the cracks, getting the results right time after time again. And we promote that person into a position where we want them to now focus on making the entire process better and figuring out things, taking chances, taking risk. That's a different behavioral construct, right? When we think about the heart, which is the other part about will do, that's what motivates you. That's the cultural fit. That's the piece that says, how does, where do I place my sort of bar, if you will, right? So I have a lot of people, so I use the predictive index in my practice, and one of the values that we measure, one of the behavioral constructs we measure is extroversion, right? Which is, do I get my energy through people, right? Or do I get it more through task? Am I people oriented or not? And I all the time have the problem where people expect somebody who is highly extroverted to be nice. Nice is a heart, it's a value, it's a construct, right? We don't make assumptions about that. Just like we also measure formality, which is rules and structure, and an individual's need to get something done right the first time, that doesn't mean that person has a very high ethical bar. Again, that's hard. So we really, really need to focus on all these pieces of the pie, right? The can do, the will do, and remember to consider the whole person. And this is a two-way street. Oftentimes when we're interviewing, we think we're just interviewing that person. That person is interviewing us. When we take these three pieces into consideration of a person as well as a job, we understand how well a person's going to fit. And that is that first context of engagement, right? So, and I do want to just say, like I said, I could talk for a whole hour about this slide. It's not an even 33% split with head, heart, and briefcase, right? So each job has something, may take a different piece of it, right? So let's take customer service operator. Head and heart is really, really going to drive success, right? Knowledge, skills, and experience is not really going to drive success because we're going to teach them our product. We're going to teach them our process. We're going to teach them how we do things here, right? So when you add insight and you focus your interview up here, that's where you're going to get more power from the interview. Now, let's take something like, let's take a heart surgeon. Not that anybody on this call is hiring a heart surgeon, but my heart surgeon, right? Like, it is knowledge, skills, and experience that drives success. I want that heart surgeon who's done the most successful surgeries. Exact problem of my heart with the greatest success rate. That's all driven by the briefcase. And arguably, hospitals have put together full systems around the head and the heart, right? So remember that when you think about job fit. The second piece is manager. And this is so key, right? I can be in the best job, but if my manager doesn't know how to connect with me, doesn't know what's important to me, and doesn't lead me in a way or manage me in a way that's meeting my needs, it's a problem. Inc. recently put out a survey. This was in June, Inc. magazine. They surveyed about 3,000 employees and said about 48% are experiencing burnout, 61% have elevated stress levels, and 32% are lonely at work. Like, lonely at work, that sounds like something we don't really talk about, right? I'm super lonely. For me to work at home all day by myself with my dog, it makes me really lonely. And what we're talking about here, folks, is these kinds of numbers: burnt out, stress, lonely. You don't get the best work out of somebody. You're not hitting optimal performance for your organization. Thank God we have an answer, right? The Employee Assistance Program. I got to tell you, while that's a valuable asset that you provide to your employees, that's not enough here for this situation. It's really not enough. We need to equip our managers with the ability to meet their employees where we are. The number one driver for performance and engagement for employees is psychological safety. Can I be vulnerable? Can I say, guys, I really need to meet in person. I'm really sorry. I have a hard time focusing when I'm over Zoom and I get very distracted. And would it be possible for us to meet together? Can I say that without being judged? Can I say that? Can I give you my honest feelings, right? When an individual feels this level of psychological safety, they are able to innovate, they cooperate better, and they're at their best, which means they're at their best performing for your organization. This all requires a much more human approach to managing. Now, Eric Mosley, who is going to be speaking at the HR Leadership Conference that I believe we just sent out an email about. Great leaders instinctively know that the more human connection in a company, the better it performs, right? It is about working human. It's about understanding our people and really connecting with them. What can you do? And this is again from the Inc. article that I was talking about. Say thank you. Be intentional. Say thank you to your employees. Our employees are dealing with record levels of stresses, as we just saw. And they need to hear that they're appreciated. Not just the millennials, not just the Zers or Xers or whoever they are. I think I'm an Xer. But check in often and routinely. Check in often. Where we've hit summer, this is putting on different challenges for people, different challenges for our workforce, some good, some challenging. But again, check in, make sure that you're keeping the pulse on your folks. It's not enough to let up because we're now hybrid and I may see you once a week. We need to make sure that we maintain that constant feedback where we're focused on growth of employees, we're focused on innovation of what they're able to do, and the inclusivity of everybody in our organization. The worst thing that a manager can do is only talk to the people who they like or who are easy to talk to. We used to talk about the word resilience, right? In 2020, we were talking about resilience all the time. And here, what we're really talking about is formalizing appreciation for our employees. Really, really making sure that we are checking an intentional box, and not in a way that just says, I say thank you, but in a way that says, I see you, I recognize you, and I appreciate what you're doing. And I have to tell you, it's not magic, right? We can't just tell managers that this is what we want them to do and think that it's going to happen. This has to be an intentional focus for your organization. I talk to young people. I talk to people all the time. This is one of the most important things. One of the best ways you can meet your employees is to train your managers on how to have these difficult conversations that may not be easy for some. Some might be able to do this in a heartbeat. Others might need some more support, might need some challenge. The third force of disengagement is culture, right? So company culture. We talk about this all the time, and we don't give necessarily a lot of parameters here, right? But the company culture is a set of shared values that characterize an organization. We're seeing a lot of organizations really focusing on culture, particularly along the lines of inclusion and around areas of we want people, we want all kinds of people to feel safe and comfortable here. It's a value of our organization that we are inclusive and that we provide opportunity to everybody across the board, right? It also is the way that people feel about the work they do, the values they believe in, and we're measuring, that's the heart, right? We're trying to get the heart fit, the culture fit. It can't be overlooked. And in order to interview for cultural fit, it really has to be intentional, right? So where we really understand core values of our organization. So, and that's again, a whole nother hour of topic, if you will. What I'm going to peel apart or sort of focus in on is what's important to our younger workers who are making up, gosh, I wish I had this. And this is from 2018. This is from before the pandemic. This was taken from an article in Forbes, which talks about what is important to Gen Z and millennials, right? They want a purpose, not just a paycheck. Money's not the top motivator. We may be seeing things that are telling us otherwise with jobs that have higher salaries, et cetera. But what millennials and Gen Zs really want is their own development. They want to be coached. They want to be mentored. They want to have the opportunity to connect with a leader, with your CEO, with the people who are the folks who they aspire to be. They don't want an annual performance review. They don't want that annual work assessment that says you did these 5 things great in, January, February, and March, and then these 6 things wrong in June, July, and August, right? They want frequent, constant check-ins. That's one of the things we talked about our managers. Our managers need to be taught how to do those check-ins, made sure they know that that's important. This, the 5th one down, which I love, is this is a huge culture shift. We don't want to fix our weaknesses. We want to develop our strengths. We play to our strengths, right? If I'm a excitable networker where I meet people and I understand them well, I want to keep doing that. I want to do more of it. I don't want you to make me look at spreadsheets and figure out pivot tables on Excel, right? We also want to collaborate in a really different way, or millennials want to collaborate in a really different way. Many folks look at collaboration in different ways. Again, that's really driven by the head, and it's value to find out what collaboration means to somebody. What does it mean? It does mean something different to all of us. So these are, I love this slide. I do believe we share this. I really like some of this information. I think it can help us. And we're going to focus here on performance management, right? Our typical HR centralized driven annual performance management process has a net promoter score of -60. That's like the lowest score ever. That means those annual performance management programs, those systems, they're despised more than cable companies, internet service providers, and health insurance companies. That was taken from Culture Amp in 2021. I love that idea that we hate cable companies less than our performance review. And this is managers, employees, and HR. We hate that performance process. Fix it, right? We want to consider an evaluation in terms of the culture you want to procure. Do I want to have a culture that is valuing consistent check-ins where we're working on developing you and developing your strengths, right? This is a way to change your performance management process, to culturally change the way we look at how we manage our people and develop our people. We're going to focus on development rather than how did you do what I asked you to do, right? There's still value in understanding where you did something well and where you didn't do something well, but that can't be the only thing. And we also, performance management programs need clarity. 100% need clarity. What are we working on here? Development plan. I have people ask me all the time, what do I do to keep my people? People want to know what their opportunity is. And it doesn't mean they want to become a manager. I often say to people, anybody who wants to become a manager needs to spend a week in a manager's shoes. I think it's the hardest job you can do. I think managing people is one of the hardest jobs because some of the best employees are the hardest people to manage, right? So the final force of disengagement is team. And this is really challenging because now that we've gone into a hybrid environment, or we're remote still, or we come into work sometimes, it's hard to keep people connected. Oh gosh, way back in the day, in the 90s, maybe could have been in the early 2000s, but there was a whole new idea, and there was a book, Managing by Walking Around, right? Which was leaders, corporate leaders, managers, CEOs would walk around and talk to people. And it was how they got these great little tidbits of information. And it isn't happening. It's not how we're building a connection anymore. We can have, and I think most organizations do have some way to connect, but let's make sure we're not losing that touch, right? Um, Keeping people connected. Some people need to be kept connected in different ways. I need to see people. Right. I make sure I see people, and some people don't. But it's important that we understand what it is that makes people feel connected, how we can value that. And one of the best ways to do that is to ask. One of the very best ways to do that is to ask. It was funny. In October of last year, I was asked to give an organization some best practices or some ideas on how to keep people connected and keep people sort of motivated. And I suggested, it was a very small team, not very, but it was small enough that this worked. I suggested that the CEO send his team lunch, right? DoorDash, however you want to do it. Send everybody lunch, have it arrive at 1 o'clock, get everybody on a Zoom meeting, and everybody eat lunch together. Nice surprise, and just have some conversation where we try to emulate that lunchroom, if you will. So um, I met with him and the team later, and he said, I did that. And everybody said, you didn't send us lunch. You told us to make our own lunch and come into the meeting. Well, certainly a little bit of the excitement was lost by that, and a little bit of the appreciation, if we want to go back to the first discussion, was lost by that. But anyway, there are different ways in which we can make sure that we're managing by walking around still and keeping the team together. New hires. Whoa, right? I remember there was a time when we were like, oh, we'll never hire anybody remotely, right? Let's make sure that we're keeping the team inspired and that we're letting everybody know. Let everybody know, not just the people who are working with this person, but let everybody in the organization know, and have some kind of way that we can add the human element and working human. And that, again, is by Mosley, who's going to be speaking at our conference. My two favorite books to help you to think about, the humanization of work and how we do this effectively, is a book, Radical Candor by Kim Scott, which has been updated very recently. A client of mine gave me the book probably about 3 years ago. And Making Work Human by Eric Mosley and Derek Irvine. So with that, I will take any questions that anybody has or any thoughts. I did get a question from around where the data was from. I think I provided that to you to a satisfactory level. But any
I think the data they asked about, Holly, was your first slide, which had the how many people are looking for a new job, and we can if we can share that link when we send out the slides if you don't have it handy right now. Sure. I've seen the same article five different articles saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. That was great. Thank you very much. I did have one question for you, Holly. You talk about the importance of appreciation and the fact that in this virtual world, as well as manage any good ideas or tips on how to structure, to create some structure around that with some of the companies you work with?
Yeah, so, a lot of organizations clearly have gone to some kind of online system, if you will, which would be, Teams or Slack or some way to communicate with everybody. And there's recognition sort of virtually that way, as well as very personal one-on-one. Again, from a behavioral context, some people really do like a very broad range of acknowledgement and where people know what they did. Others really prefer to be acknowledged as a team or privately. So it does matter what people want, but certainly these very intentional ways to consistently and inclusively, the worst thing you can do is have it be like a an employee pet kind of situation. So you want to make sure that it's consistent, intentional, and inclusive.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Holly. We appreciate it, and a lot of good things to think about. So maybe we might have one more chat question here. Let's see. How can you find out how employees want to be recognized? So someone to your, Holly, if you're still there, someone said, well, how do you determine what somebody would look for?
Yeah, that's a great question. You ask. I think that, one of the things we do is and I found this during COVID is we make a lot of assumptions. When we are looking to be as impactful and very intentional as possible, the best way is to ask. You can do SurveyMonkey. You can do, one-on-ones. You can have a group conversation. There's all different ways that you can find out how employees want to be recognized. Now, certainly larger groups, you're probably going to want to have some kind of survey so you can aggregate the data, but also within departments, smaller groups, you can find out at a micro level, and it doesn't have to be a one size fits all.